Welcome back. Contraception can be used to plan when people have children and how many children they have. Now, this includes choosing when they want to begin having children, how far apart they want their children to be, and when they want to stop having children. And joining us to make sense of this is a medical doctor, Adegoke Adedade. Thank you for joining us, doctor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, contraception is riddled with controversies which permeates the spiritual, mental, and cultural facets of our lives. But let us start with the definition. Talk to us. What is contraception? Or let's say, what are contraceptives?
Okay. All right. So, a contraceptive is, let's say, more like a method that one would use to prevent pregnancy. And so we classify contraceptives based on different methods. We could say there are modern and traditional methods. We could say modern methods, we could divide them into hormonal and non-hormonal. But basically, the basic idea is you're trying to prevent an unwanted pregnancy from occurring. So any method or means that one will use to prevent an unwanted pregnancy would be what we call a contraceptive.
Okay, Dr. Adegoke, I'd like us to focus a little on the hormonal methods. How effective are they?
Okay, so let me start from the differentiating traditional from non-traditional. We usually say traditional because from time there have been methods that women have used or believed would work to prevent pregnancies over time. One of the commonest ones is knowing your fertile date. So usually people say if you are able to check your body temperatures or using the consistency of the vaginal discharge, one can use that to time when the woman is likely to ovulate. And around the time, ovulation means the time when the egg comes out of the ovary into the uterus, which is the time the person is likely to get pregnant. That's when the egg is likely to come in contact with the sperm. So commonest method and oldest we've found is the one of tracking the fertile period. And so what happens is the woman avoids sexual intercourse around that time of her ovulation. Then other traditional methods are tracking with the use of the cervical mucus, because usually around the time of ovulation, the cervical mucus is seen to be thinner and we say more stretchy. It looks more like an egg white consistency. And a lot of women come in and tell you, oh, I know I'm ovulating because I saw the discharge is quite watery around that time. So usually that works too. Then also people use more like the beads, calendar beads, to sort of track their cycle around the time they're ovulating. So those are more of the traditional methods. Okay, the withdrawal method is also a traditional method. That's a case in which you try to pull out just before the man ejaculates, although it has been seen to be quite unreliable, if I could say that. So for modern methods we have now, we divide them into non-hormonal and hormonal. Non-hormonal being that for contraceptives, some contraceptives would include some of most like what would I call it now? Because the woman's body contains some hormones that control her cycle. So what we do in hormonal contraceptives is that we make the artificial form of those hormones and then use it to control the cycle to prevent pregnancy. So hormonal methods are those ones that have those artificial hormones in place, and non-hormonal methods are those that don't have any hormones at all. So non-hormonal methods will include the male and female condoms. You would have things like the withdrawal method is also still non-hormonal. Then hormonal methods would include the implants, the hormonal IUCDs, as well as the injectables as well. For under the non-hormonal, we still divide them into short-term and long-term. So you also have long-term like IUCD, which is just the plain copper metal. And then you have short-term methods like the condoms and all that as well.
I like that you already started talking about, the classification and how many types there are and all of that. I'd like you to go ahead, but then I'd like you to help us understand the various types and their peculiarities, basically. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So when you're looking at the hormonal methods, you look at short-term methods and long-term methods as well. If I divide it that way to make it easier for us to go through it, okay? So for short-term hormonal methods, you have the contraceptive pill, the one we call the combined contraceptive pill. What that means is that it has two different hormones in place, the estrogen and the progesterone hormone, in a single pill. There's another type of the contraceptive pill, which we call the progestin-only pill, that has just one hormone. That's why it's not combined. So the combined has estrogen and progesterone. The non-combined, the progestin-only pill, which we also call the mini pill, has just a single hormone involved. That's the progesterone hormone. And for oral contraceptives, you have to take them every day. Take them by mouth every day at the same time, every single day. So for someone who finds it difficult to keep to a schedule, it might be difficult to take an oral contraceptive. Another good thing about it is that once you stop using the pill, the fertility of the woman returns almost immediately. And so that's actually one of the reasons why we call it a short term, because it acts just for just a short period of time. Other short acting are injectables, which means the woman actually has to get injected for it. We have two types of those: the ones that last for 2 months and those that last for 3 months. Okay, and actually one of those methods, the Cyanopress, is actually available to self-inject. That means the woman can get it at a pharmacy and you apply it for herself. She doesn't have to get to the hospital to use it as well. We have other examples, including the patches, which are also short-term, but they're not readily available in our environment at this moment as well. So for long-term hormonal methods, we have the implants, which could be either for 3 years or 5 years. The 3-year implant is called Implanon. Usually it's a very small device, about 3 to 4 cm in length, and is usually placed on the woman's arm. It's a very short procedure. It's usually not painful. I think the only thing you should feel is the single injection to more like dull the area. And after that, you usually shouldn't feel anything. The Jada has 2 pins in place, and it lasts for 5 years. Okay, so those ones are long-term. And the other long-term hormonal is the what we call Mirena now. That looks like the IUD, which has been used for years, more like a T-shaped device that contains the hormone around it. Okay, so the great thing about that one is that apart from preventing pregnancies, it can also help the women that have issues with heavy bleeding and severe menstrual pain, because it helps to reduce bleeding and helps to reduce pain and side effects as well. And the hormones themselves have an increased risk of helping with reducing the risk of endometrial cancers and ovarian cancers as well. So I've talked about short term, I've talked about long term. And then the last group are the, let's say, sort of more like permanent methods. So for the male, we talked about vasectomy. For the female, we talk about tubal ligation. Usually, right now, the procedures, a tubal ligation can be done in less than an hour. The vasectomy can be done in 15 minutes, actually, and the methods are for life. So you have maybe less than 0.1%, 0.01 out of 1,000 that could fail. So it's usually permanent and for life, and usually irreversible.
So talk to us. How long after use does it take a woman to get back her fertility? Her fertility, yeah.
So as I said earlier, for the oral contraceptives, usually fertility returns immediately after you stop. Usually it could last for, let's say, a week afterwards. But usually the woman should get back her fertility once she stops the medications. For the implants, we also say that fertility should return immediately you remove removes the implant, but then you can still have some delay for about 2 to 6 months thereabout, or a maximum of 6 months. The injectables have a longer effect. Though the effect varies, but it can delay fertility for as long as a year. Sometimes, occasionally, let's say rarely, about 18 months. For that's for the injectables. That's a 2 or 3 monthly ones. Yes. Okay. For the IUCD, usually fertility returns immediately after.
Yeah, at some point you're going to talk to us about side effects, but let me start with IUCD, which has already been linked with ectopic pregnancy. What is the medical world doing about this?
Okay, so the truth is, if we have to be frank, the truth is there's no contraceptive that doesn't have one side effect or the other. But when we're comparing the side effects, what we usually want to do is to look at the bigger picture. Because we say IUCDs can cause ectopic pregnancies, but that you see less than 1 in 2,000 women would have that side effect. But if you compare that to the number of unwanted pregnancies, say for Nigeria is about 20 to 40% of pregnancies are unwanted in Nigeria as at 2020. You compare that with the risk of having an ectopic pregnancy, it's almost nothing. And when you say it can cause it, it's not as if it's going to happen to every single woman. It's actually a very, very rare complication, as it were. Okay, so one of the things that is done is in applying correctly, because the wrong application actually is what makes a form of contraceptive to fail or become, what would I say, to have so many side effects like that. So for IUDs, the proper application is important to ensure that it's in place as much as possible. But one major thing is having ectopic pregnancies is actually a very, very extremely rare side effect of using an IUD.